Hello there, this is the 15th section of the SwiftUI course. This is going to be a big one because we're going to learn about combine. And combine is all about turning your data and making it more like a state. So what's going to happen? Well, basically it means that your data can be edited, it can be manipulated, it can change over time, it can be passed across different components. So you can imagine the craziness that usually happens when you have to deal with this type of stuff. But with SwiftUI, everything is so much simpler, and you're gonna see. So let's take a look at our current data. We have the data model, very useful, and then we have some sample data here. This is read-only. There's no way we can change the content of this at this time. Essentially, what we need to do is to put and initialize our data externally in a store so that we can store some sample data, but also we can store more data and add and modify that data. So the question is, what are we going to build today? We're going to add a button that allows us to add data to this list. We're also going to allow a swipe to delete, just like in Mail, for example. And then we're gonna have an edit mode, which allows us to reorder the data in this list. How crazy would it be to learn all of this stuff in one session? So are you ready for this? And by the way, even though that this is a breeze compared to other platforms, it's still a little bit complicated, as it is usually with data. And you can totally skip this section if you feel that this is too much information. So the first thing we're gonna do is to create our store. So I'm gonna go and create a new file right after update detail. I'm going to name it update store. There's no UI here, it's purely data, so we can basically delete all of this stuff except for import UI. And then we're going to import combine as well, which is the framework which allows us to create all of this store and manipulate the data. So we're gonna type class update store of type bindable object curly braces. We're going to need to create a var did change so that we can listen to all the changes. So var did change is equal to pass through subject and then pointy brackets void never parentheses at the end. I promise this is the most head-scratching code we've ever done, but this is, from what I understand, is what's going to listen to the state changes. By the way, if you want to learn more about each of these values, so for example, what is a bindable object, you can press on the option key and click here. You're going to get a little bit more information, and you can click on the documentation. So pass through subject, you can see that we have a bunch of explanations about it. Okay, so the next part is whenever our data is being modified, we need to change that to the store. So var updates column, and then we are setting the data model. So brackets update curly braces. Then on the did set, we're gonna do did change dot send parentheses. So did set is kind of an event where when we modify the updates, then it's going to send to the store. The last part is to initialize our class. So we're gonna type init parentheses updates colon, and then using the data model update, we're gonna set a default value of nothing, and then at the end curly braces. So now we're gonna initialize the updates data at the beginning. So self means we're going to get the values at the root level. It's kind of like this in JavaScript. So self.updates is equal to updates. With this, we're going to be able to call this class and initialize it with some initial data and then update to the store. All right, so this was the hardest part, and it's okay if you don't understand everything. We're gonna put all of this in practice. When you're gonna start using it, it's gonna make more sense. So let's go back to update list and go to the top. I'm going to hide my navigator and then resume my UI here. At the very top, right after updates, instead of using my static data here, I'm going to use a store that is more dynamic, and I'm going to be able to change the data and listen to changes. So what I'm gonna do is call object binding using the commercial A, var store is equal to update store. So that's the class that we just created. We're gonna initialize it with updates, and I'm going to fill that with some initial update data that I created. So update data. So now I have two types of data. We have the static one, and then we have the dynamic one that is more like a state. And now, instead of using just updates, which is this, I'm going to use store.updates. If you check the preview, nothing has changed, and that's a good sign. Now let's create a button. We're gonna put the button right after navigation view before the list. Let's summon it. I'm going to summon a button from the views, and then I have my button right here. I'm going to write add update. So now we have a button, and it's not gonna do anything for now. So we're gonna need to write a function that this action will call. And the function has to be outside of the body. So right here, before the body and after the object binding, I'm going to write func add update, parentheses, curly braces. This function is simply going to add a record to my store. So I'm going to type store.updates.append, which is how you add a new value into an array. So this one is accepting an update data model. So update, parentheses, and now we can fill some data. Starting with the image, it's going to be certificate 1. The title is going to be new title. The text is going to be new text. Date is going to be July 1st. Now we have our function. We just need to call it from the button. So I'm going to write the name of the function, which is add update, and that's it. All right, so that's a lot of setup, I understand, but once you set up your store and then you set your function, that's it. You can do anything you want. So we are connecting this to the button called add update, and when we click here, so right now there's no record at the bottom, as you can see. When we click here, it should add a new one. So I'm gonna click here and then scroll down, and boom, we have our new record that we just added thanks to this function right here. Now we can add a simple swipe to delete, but first we need to wrap our navigation button inside a for each. So I'm going to command click navigation button and then put that for repeat. I'm going to have to move the store.updates to the for each right here. So click here and put store.updates. And for the list, we can just use that as a wrapper. So it's just gonna be list with curly braces. All right, my code is starting to get a little bit crazy, so I'm gonna indent this. It's looking better. So what's happening here is that we have the list, which is basically used for the navigation options. We have the for each, which is used as a loop for each item. And the for each is what we're gonna use to create our swipe to delete. So again, the list is for navigation options, and for each, I'm going to use this. So I'm going to type .undelete curly braces, and here I'm going to receive the index from the undelete. so that I can use this to tell which data that I'm going to delete. All right, so let's manipulate the store. So self.store.updates.remove. So we're removing one record. And then now we need an index. So I'm gonna put index.first exclamation point. Let's test it. So now I can just swipe and voila, you have these really nice gestures that comes with it. Next, I'm going to create a function that allows people to reorder the items. So the function is right after add update. So func move, and then I'm gonna set from source column index set comma to destination column integer, so int curly braces. When the user is reordering the items, we're gonna receive information. So we're gonna use that information to update our store. We're going to type store.updates.swap@. So instead of using a pen or instead of using remove, we're using swap@. And then we're gonna take the source that gets the index dot first exclamation point, and then to destination. Now we just need to call this function called move, and we're gonna put that right after undelete. So dot unmove parentheses perform column, and we're gonna call the move function like this. I'm going to auto indent again, and now we have undelete and then unmove right after. Right now there's no UI that allows us to reorder, so we're gonna enable that. We can put that in the top right buttons. In this case, I'm simply going to replace the settings button. So I'm going to delete this and then put edit button parentheses. That's it. All right, so now we have this edit button, and when I click on it, it turns into a done button, and I have all of these beautiful options such as delete and then reorder like this. If I want to delete the record, and voila. So all of those interactions came for free. The hard part was simply to set up the store and then the object binding, set up the functions, and so that when we're doing these interactions, something is happening to our store. Before we go, I just want to style this button really quickly. So first of all, I'm going to set a background. I'm going to set that to background 3. So color. I'm going to set a padding of 8, corner radius of 8 as well. The color for the text is going to be white, and voila. That's it for the navigation view, and also learning a little bit about Combine, how to set up the object binding, how to even write functions, which is really useful as you dig deeper into SwiftUI and you want to make your UI a lot more dynamic. Then we learn a lot about the built-in functions such as undelete, unmove. We also learned that this deceptively simple edit button gives us all of these options for free. So I think that's absolutely amazing. In the next session, I want to show you how to set up a tab bar for your UI. And I also want to show you how to set the initial screen so that when you test on the simulator or on your device, it's going to land first on that screen. So I'll see you in the next session.